Welcome to the Explainer. So have you ever wished there was like a universal rule book for being a good person? Well, that's exactly what the brilliant and kind of intimidating philosopher Immanuel Kant set out to create. Today we're going to try to find a clear path through his ethical ideas, pulling straight from his major work, The Critique of Practical Reason.
All right, let's dive right into the huge question that really kept Kant up at night. What actually makes an action good? Is it all about the results? You know, creating the most happiness for the most people? Or is there something else to it? For Kant, the answer had to be something way more solid, something that applied to everyone, everywhere.
Okay, so Kant looked at the idea of basing morality on feelings or happiness and basically said, no way. He thought that was a recipe for total chaos. I mean, think about it, right? What makes you happy might be totally selfish, or it could even hurt someone else. It's completely subjective, it's always shifting. Kant saw this as trying to build a house on sand. He was convinced that the only solid foundation, the only bedrock for morality, had to be pure, unadulterated reason.
And he had a real problem with what he called the principle of self-love. It sounds a little dramatic, but it's just this idea that if everyone is only chasing their own happiness, you can't possibly have universal moral laws. It just doesn't work. All you end up with are like helpful hints for getting what you personally desire. And for Kant, that has absolutely nothing to do with real morality.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. A pretty radical idea from Kant. He argued that when you're talking about why you do something, morally speaking, all desires are kind of the same. It doesn't matter if you want an expensive bottle of wine or if you want to help a charity. If the real reason you're doing it is for that warm, fuzzy feeling it gives you, that pleasure, then it's all coming from what he calls the lower desires. It's still, at its core, just about what makes you feel good.
So, okay, if our feelings and desires are just pulling us all over the place, totally unreliable guides, what's left? What can we possibly use instead? Well, Kant's answer was a different kind of compass, one that he believed every single rational person has inside them, pure reason. He was absolutely convinced this could be the universal standard, the true north for everybody, everywhere, no exceptions.
And this brings us to a really crucial distinction he makes. He talks about the matter versus the form of an action. So the matter is just what you're trying to do, the outcome you want. Kant says, forget that, ignore it. What really matters is the form, the principle or the rule behind the action. Think of it this way. The matter is the ingredients, but the form is the recipe. And a true moral law has to be a universal recipe, one that works for anybody, no matter what their personal tastes or circumstances are.
Okay, before we get to his most famous idea, we've got to get this one key term down, a maxim. I know it sounds super academic, but it's actually pretty simple. A maxim is just your personal rule for what you're about to do. For example, your maxim could be, when I need cash, I'll pick up an extra shift. Or it could be, when I need cash, I'll lie to get a loan. It's just the principle you're deciding to act on.
All right, so you've got your personal maxim. How do you know if it's actually, morally okay? Well, this is where Kant gives us a tool, a test. And this is his most famous contribution to philosophy, the categorical imperative.
The best way to think about the categorical imperative is as a simple three-step thought experiment. Step 1, figure out what your maxim is. What's the rule you're acting on? Step 2, universalize it. Imagine a world where everyone has to follow that exact same rule, like it's a law of physics. And then step 3, check for contradictions. Does this new world even work, or does your rule completely self-destruct?
Let's make this real with one of Kant's own classic examples. Say you're in a serious bind. You desperately need some money. You think about asking for a loan, and you promise you'll pay it back. But, there's no way you can. So what's your maxim here? It's, when I need money, I will make a false promise to get it.
Okay, now for step 2. Let's universalize that. Let's imagine a world where this is a universal law. Anytime anyone needs something, they must make a false promise to get it. What would that world actually be like? Just take a second to picture it.
And boom, there's the contradiction. In a world where everyone makes false promises, the whole idea of a promise becomes meaningless, right? It just collapses. As Kant put it, the principle would annihilate itself. No one would ever believe a promise again. And if no one believes promises, then you can't even make your false promise in the first place. It's impossible.
So, you see, your maxim completely self-destructs. The only reason a lie works is because people generally expect you to be telling the truth. If you make lying the universal rule, you destroy that expectation. And because the maxim leads to this kind of logical implosion, it fails the test.
And this is key. The action is morally wrong not because of the bad results it creates, but because it's fundamentally irrational.
So, why does any of this matter? Why is it so important to follow these laws we discover through reason? I know it might sound kind of restrictive, like a bunch of rules, but for Kant, this is the absolute key to understanding what real freedom is all about.
Kant drew a really sharp line in the sand here. When your actions are driven by your desires, your fears, or what you hope to gain, you're basically just a puppet of your own impulses. He had a word for this, heteronomy, which means being ruled by something else. But true freedom, what he called autonomy, is the exact opposite. It's self-rule. It's when you act based on a moral law that you, yourself, have recognized through your own reason.
And as Kant explains it, this autonomy has two parts. First, there's what he calls negative freedom. That's freedom from being a slave to our desires. But then, and this is the really important part, there's positive freedom. That's the freedom to actively choose to live by our own rational principles. It's the power to literally be the author of your own moral life.
And all of this builds up to the final and maybe the most powerful idea in Kant's whole moral system, because this isn't just about following rules. It goes way deeper. It's about what makes us human, about the very source of our worth and dignity.
Think about it. Unlike any other animal on the planet, we aren't just driven by instinct. We have this amazing ability to step back, to use our reason, and to choose to do the right thing even when it's hard, even when we don't feel like it. And for Kant, that capacity, right there, is what gives every single one of us a special, unconditional value he called dignity.
And this is exactly why Kant is still so incredibly important today. Because we all possess this dignity, we have to treat each other as ends in ourselves, not just as tools, not just as a means to get what we want. In his words, we're all lawmakers in a kingdom of ends. Our real worth, our real freedom, truly shines when we choose to act out of duty, guided by our own reason.
You know that feeling you get sometimes? That little voice in your head that says you ought to do the right thing, even when it's the harder choice? Well, for Kant, that very feeling, that awareness of duty, is the ultimate proof that you are free. It proves you're more than just a bundle of desires. The moral law doesn't crush your freedom, it's the very thing that reveals it to you.
So in the end, Kant leaves us with this really powerful, really personal challenge. He basically hands his universal test over to each and every one of us. This isn't some dusty, abstract idea for a philosophy class. It's a moral compass that you can use right now, today. So the next time you're about to do something, just stop and ask yourself that question. What if everyone acted on my principle?